Catholic version of the
We're live.
Lord's Prayer. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our March 22nd regular meeting of Belleville City Council. Today's meeting is being held electronically as our City Council chamber is being renovated as per our modernization project. So I want to start by saying a very big thank you to our staff for assisting in the setup of this electronic meeting of Belleville City Council. And I want to thank all members of council for their cooperation and flexibility in meeting under these unusual circumstances, as is now permitted by the provincial government. While we all know the need for cooperation during the best of times, these virtual meetings are certainly more difficult and awkward. I do look to you, my colleagues, for extra cooperation as we conduct the business necessary for the operations of the City of Belleville. For those watching on the city streaming service or on our YouTube channel or on your TV, I'd point out that our agenda and all reports that we will be discussing today are on the City of Belleville website at www.belleville.ca. And if you go to that website under the agenda section, minutes and live meeting video, it's on the left side of your screen when you first get to it. You will then be able to click on the March 22nd calendar, and that'll bring you to the agenda for today's meeting. There is a hyperlink in the agenda. It's in, I believe, in blue lettering in the event you want to look at the individual reports so that you can follow along with the meeting as it goes. I will now call the meeting to order and state that all members of council are present. I am here at Belleville City Hall, and all other members are present electronically. I will ask for the Director of Corporate Services and City Clerk, Mr. McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Item number 3 on the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anyone have anything today? Seeing none, there are no public meetings today, so we'll move to reading and confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of March the 8th, the regular in-camera meeting minutes of March the 8th, 2021. Can I please get a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Millette. Any discussion on those items? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. There are no deputations today and no correspondence. But before I ask for a motion to go into committee of the whole, I do want to take a moment to recognize the retirement of Joe Lonsbury with Lexicon Corporation after 35 years of work for the City of Belleville in the current Lexicon Corporation, but previous to that, it was Floridian Connections and then the Belleville Utilities Commission. Joe is our contact person when it deals with this utility, providing electrical service for residents in much of Belleville, and he has been a great pleasure to work with. I did invite him to today's meeting so that he could receive this presentation, but as we all know, he's a little bit of a shy person sometimes, and he declined, but we will be presenting him with a certificate to recognize this amazing achievement. On behalf of all of the citizens of Belleville, we are grateful for his service over these past 35 years and wish him and his family all the best in their retirement. I will now ask for a motion to go into committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the chair, moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor, it's carried. And so we'll move now to 8A, reports. And the agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. We'll start with 8A1, the purchase of a diesel loader tractor. It is the Capital and Fleet Assets Manager's report number CFAM 2021-04. And the resolution is that the request for proposal from Anderson Equipment Sales be accepted for the supply and delivery of one new 2021 model year diesel loader tractor in the amount of $87,700 plus $11,401 HST for a total of $99,101. This being the most qualified proposal received, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. May I have a mover and a seconder, and we can start discussion. Councillor McCaw and Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just down on the page 2, it talks about 5 specs that were not in the one that we're going to receive today and approve. Were those specs not important enough? I presume they weren't important enough, or would it have been better to resend it out and have those specs in our purchase?
Councillor Thompson, I'm going to ask Mr. Reid, who I believe is on the line. Manager Reid, how are you today?
Good afternoon.
Did you hear Councillor Thompson's question?
Yes, I did. Through the chair to Councillor Thompson. Yeah, we disqualified McEwen's due to the specifications that were listed within the specs. The transmission was not the same gear ratio, which for slow operation and high PTO rams, it did not meet the specification, as well as just small things such as hydraulic pumps on the front of the tractor. The Massey that they submitted the bid for was not the equivalent to the Kubota that was bid.
No, my question, sorry, Mr. Reid. The question was with Anderson, there was 5 specs that they weren't in their thing. Were they important to have, or you felt that they were able to take them out and not be a problem?
Yeah, they were just minor items such as fenders over the wheel well, just minor ones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so anyone else, any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A2, Contract Administration and Construction Inspection Services for the Wallbridge Loyalist Road Bridge Rehabilitation. It is the Senior Project Manager's Report Number ENG 2021-05, and the resolution is that in accordance with Section 30.3, Sole and Single Sourcing, approval and reporting of the City's Purchasing Bylaw Number 2020-09, the proposal from HP Engineering, Inc. be accepted for the supply of contract administration and construction inspection services for the Wallbridge Loyalist Road Bridge Rehabilitation construction contract in the amount of $52,010 plus $6,761.30 HST for a total dollar amount of $58,771.30, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. May I please have a mover and a seconder on this? Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Williams. Any questions or discussion on this? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. We had added staff to engineering development services for contract administration, and just wondering why we're not using in-house for this one.
Sure, I will ask Director Ashton or Mr. Bove.
So I can answer that. So bridges are more specialized function. So a lot of our staff, are dealing with roads and what not, but the bridges kind of do require. So we do have, instead of hiring someone specialized in bridges, we do this as contract administration function.
Okay, thank you.
And also this bridge is actually the responsibility is with Quinte West, as that we share it. So this gives us a third party. Councillor Thompson, I saw your hand up.
Just a quick question. Has Quinte West approved this already? Or are they still to be approved?
No, my understanding is they've approved it. Mr. Ashton, do you want to just confirm that?
I believe they've approved it through their budget process. I'm not 100% sure if they've approved the specific contract or if they have to go to council for that purpose, but I think both parties are working towards getting this project done.
But we don't see any problem with them, Quinte West, approving it anyway, Steve, right?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A3, request for proposals, RFP ENG 2021-06, consulting services for municipal servicing and site plan for the new Belleville Agricultural Fairgrounds. It is the Senior Project Manager's Report number ENG 2021-04. And the resolution is that the proposal submission from the Greer Galloway Group, Inc. be accepted for RFP ENG 2021-06 consulting services for municipal servicing and site plan for new Belleville Agricultural Fairgrounds in the amount of $347,029 plus $45,113.77 HST for a total dollar amount of $392,142.77. This being the most qualified proposal received, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Can I get a mover and second, please? Councillor Carr and Councillor Sandison. Thank you. Any questions or discussion on this? So just quickly for people watching, this is not just for work for the agricultural fairgrounds, but it is work for all of the commercial or light industrial that we will be selling as well on that site. So this is quite an in-depth amount of work. And again, it's not just for the relocation of the Belleville Ag Society, but also for the land that we will be selling. And that's why it's important to be done. So Councillor Alsap, you had a question or a comment? Or I'm calling the question.
No, I just had a question relating to the cost of the proposal.
Sure.
I just couldn't help but notice that the Greer Galloway quote that we have here is at nearly half of the next highest or the next least, and almost a third of the next quote. Is there a reasoning behind why it did come in so cheap?
I'm going to, Mr. Bove, I think you may be the best person to answer that question, as Mr. Joel Carbrandt reports directly to you on this project.
Certainly, Your Worship, through you to council. I think in this particular case, Greer Galloway is a local firm. It sounds like in the discussions I've had with Mr. Ashton and other engineering staff who are assisting Mr. Carbrandt with this project, that Greer Galloway was hungry for some work, and their bid reflected their desire to get the job so that they could be working locally on this project.
Okay, good. Councillor Mlett, did you have your hand up? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm going to support the recommendation. I just have a question for Project Manager O'Leary, or whomever can answer my question. Mr. Bove, I would suppose. Yeah. I notice on page 11 in the report here, towards the bottom last graph, 1.35 million was approved during the budget. And it goes on to explain other site work. Clear cutting is currently underway under a separate contract. My question is, clear cutting to what extent? Are we going to clear every tree off that site? Or are we going to try and maintain some trees in that area? I understand it's pretty much scrub cedar in that area, but if we can maintain some semblance of trees, I don't think that's going to be a bad thing.
Mr. Bove?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Millette. Yeah, there was a separate contract issued late in 2020, early 21, and I wish I could say that there were some trees left, but there are not many. They've essentially cleared the site, and they were scrub cedar. I mean, essentially, we had to get the site to its base level to be a fair amount of fill brought into the site, so the elevations are going to change on the site, and that's both for the purposes of the exhibition grounds with the Belleville Agricultural Society, but also, half the site is land that the city hopes to see developed for industrial and/or commercial use, and obviously those would typically be relatively high floor area buildings that would take up a lot of the lots that end up getting created there. So there wouldn't be a lot of room left for the trees. and the fill necessary to service the site, because it changes the elevation, the trees you would try and save likely wouldn't survive because of the change in the increased fill level around the base of those trees. So so the majority of the site will end up being cleared, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Bove. I walked it a few weeks back, or I walked into that area, and there aren't any significant trees of any vintage in that area, and those cedars will shoot up within a few years wherever you leave them to be. So thanks very much.
Yeah, and just if you want, Councillor Millette, I believe it was the second meeting in November that we considered the contract. I think it was Councillor Carr that raised a question about the company, Mulrooney, because we had an affiliate do some other work and we weren't sure about their ability to do this job. In that report had a description of the trees and why they were able to be harvested. But we also needed to clear it to be able to properly surveil the land, to figure out what the services and where they would go. I can tell you that having been on the site with Mr. Cole Carbrandt, as well as the reps of the Belleville Ag Society, we were quite surprised. Once the trees were gone, you really see the, the different levels of that Mr. Bove talked about having to bring in some fill. So we really
I saw
that.
that, and the areas that weren't clear are just thick. You can't move.
Yeah.
So,
but
okay.
They did start in the middle, and they're now almost finished. So that work is on schedule. So we're quite happy with that. Anyone else on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8A4, controls system integration and air handler replacement. It is the acting property manager's report number RCCS-PM-2021-01. And the resolution is that in accordance with the section 30.3 sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2020-09, the quotation from Train Canada ULC be accepted for the upgrade of the train building automation system and associated HVAC unit in the amount of $227,000 plus $29,510 HST, for a total amount of $256,510, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Kelly and Councillor Alsap. Any questions or discussion on this item? And for folks following along, this is for the system at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. Seeing no questions, I'll call it. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And then the last item under 8A, 8A5, revised terms of reference for the Economic and Destination Development Committee to include the Business Retention and Expansion Committee's mandate. It is a manager of economic and strategic initiatives report number ECDEV 2021-13. And the resolution is that the manager of economic and strategic initiatives report number ECDEV 2021-13 be received and approved, and further that the terms of reference for the Economic and Destination Development Committee be amended to include the mandate of the Business Retention and Expansion Committee as noted in the revised terms of reference attached to the report. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion on this? Councillor McCaw, did I see your hand up for discussion? No. Anybody discussion on this? Councillor Thompson. Sorry, I'm got confused with Councillor McCaw. Go ahead, sir.
Just if somebody can just point out what the change was, whereabouts in the wording is it the change that from the original terms of reference?
Yeah, so if you recall, we're eliminating the separate BRE committee and putting its mandate under this. Yeah. And so you'll see in the terms of reference, it just includes that as part of its responsibility.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Councillor Williams, did you have something you wanted to say on this?
Yes, Your Worship, just through you. And I support this. I know we didn't have this brought up through committee, but it did come through the recommended committee changes this year. And certainly it makes sense. I can speak for one. I know I sit on both, and with the strategic plan that we've completed, this makes sense. And I know that with the BRE committee, we haven't met in a very long time. Sorry, that was the pun. But anyhow, it's been something I think that'll work through the committee. It'll continue to work. And not only the BRE report's upcoming, but the BRE reports that we've had in the system for a long time, I think 4 or 5 or 6 years, we can use those continually as we look back at those reports and those findings and how we're continuing to improve economic development and destination development for the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else on this? And certainly I would agree, you know, there's been a lot of casualties for COVID, and one is the work of this committee. So it'll be good to see another study done on a sector so that we can see how we can continue to improve as a city in terms of how we're delivering services and creating an environment for our businesses. And I look forward to the work of the committee dealing with that. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So we'll move now to consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider each item or such items individually. So I'll go around the way my screen is set up. I'll start with Councillor Kelly. Anything you'd like pulled, sir? No? Councillor Alsap? No? Councillor McCaw?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Millette. He does, and so which one would you like, sir?
My apologies.
No problem.
Yep, 8B1 and 8B4.
Okay, Councillor Sanderson.
8B2.
Councillor Carr.
8B1, 8B2, please.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
8B1.
Councillor Thompson.
8B2 and 8B4.
Okay. I got everybody, I think. Okay, good. So then I need a resolution first that the following agenda items be approved with the exception of 8B1, 8B2, and 8B4. Moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor Carr. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll start with 8B1, which is the Alexander Street Sewer Separation and Road Reconstruction. It is the Manager of Engineering Deputy Director's report number ENG 2021-06. And the resolution is that capital project 2021-1.003, Alexander Street Sewer Separation and Road Reconstruction be deferred until such time as the city's transportation master plan has been updated to include a complete and that staff provide a follow-up report with recommendations for reallocation of the capital funding that had been allocated for capital project 2021-1.003. That is moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by, I need a seconder, please. Councillor Williams. Councillor Millette, you had asked this item first, so I'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And on this matter, it's received a fair amount of attention in the public, some news stories on it. And it's no secret to any of us around this table at this meeting that we've been inundated with messaging from the residents of the area. And I think, Your Worship, as you had pointed out in an interview with one of the online news services, that the residents have spoken, and what we see before us in this deferral is that we were listening. And I will support the deferral. I have some concerns and I have a few questions. First, I think a lot of people need to understand why this is being done in the first place, and that's because we have sewage. We have sewer separation is required in this area. When our storm sewers and our sanitary sewers were installed in 1911, which is roughly when this neighborhood was established, there was one pipe, and that pipe brought not only your the storm runoff, but also your toilets and your showers and your laundry. So what we have is a situation where we have a number of neighborhoods like this in the city, where to the detriment of the water quality in the Bay of Quinte and to the detriment of the performance of our sanitary sewer treatment facilities. We have heavy flows when there is high water events, high rain events, and there's necessary work has to be done under these streets. And as anyone understands, to get at these pipes, unfortunately, you just can't slip in underground, not disturb the trees, not disturb the existing streets, sidewalks. Basically, you can't unscramble an omelet. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. I do want to see this take place for the reasons I mentioned before: the water quality and the strain on our systems. You know, everyone loves the well-treed and lovely East Hill in our historic neighborhoods, no more so than I. I live in this neighborhood, and I support the people in that area wanting to protect that. That said, we've got a very serious situation with these services. So I don't want to see this deferral go off indefinitely. This work needs to be done at some point, but we do need to see it done in a manner that that can be used as a template for other neighborhoods where we have similar situations. I do have a question for, I guess it would be Mr. Ashen or whoever might be able to answer it. Perhaps Mr. Reed or Mr. DeCola. The water quality in this area, have we heard from any of the residents about the water quality on the existing, what I understand to be cast iron water mains again, installed in 1911?
Mr. DeCola, I see you are on the call. If you want to unmute yourself, did you hear? There you are. Good to see you. Did you hear Councillor Millet's question?
Yes, I did. And through
Go
the
ahead.
chair to Councillor Millet, there have been water quality complaints along Alexander. There was a dead ending at one time, one of the original projects when we met at a cross street, which created a color water complaint for several years in that area. The main is a 6-inch. It is a little bit small, doesn't quite service the needs, and there are fire protection issues that could be considered a longer term problem because the main should be increased to an 8-inch, which was part of the original design perspective.
Okay, thank you. And I have one, while you're still on the line, Mr. DeCola, I notice on page 5 in the report, there are risks. It says in the report, it should be noted by council in making a decision that there are risks to such a deferral. For example, some sewer repairs may be required to address the continuing deterioration of the existing system and water distribution system. Do we know how frequently we are called upon to make any of those repairs in that area? Is it a frequent flyer, if you will, for requiring servicing on the underground services?
On the sewer side, a few of the laterals have some serious issues, and they're all related to trees. They are the old clay services that the tree root infiltration has essentially blocked them, so they have to be cleaned out several times per year. I might be exaggerating on that extent, but at least once per year for several of these locations. And other services are a bit of a dog's breakfast in regards to this is on the water side, because they are historic, going through older sections of the property, creating other operational issues with small service size, lower pressures, and potentially galvanized services, which could create further issue with degradation of water quality.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And again, I will support it, but I just want to underscore the fact that while we are deferring this and we are taking the 3.68 million that has been approved, and some other neighborhood of the city is probably going to rejoice that now they've moved up the ladder. We are going to have to revisit this, and it is a serious problem. Regardless, there's no easy answer here. I'm very much in favor of retaining every tree we can, but we simply can't ignore century-old, improperly designed for this era anyway, sewer and water underground. It's just absolutely can't stand. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Alexander Street was the third highest ranked combined services project for the city. And while we have an abundance of roadwork projects that we could address if we defer this project, I think we need to really consider that decision carefully. I took a drive over there on the weekend just to reacquaint myself with the street, and it has aged considerably since I was over there, and especially at that T where Ann Street comes up and abuts Alexander. Even the road work needs to be looked at. But I appreciate that we're going to lose some trees there, but the underlying infrastructure, and I think this is the critical part, it's over 100 years old and it's due for replacement. So Alexander Street itself has been on the city's radar since 2014. And it's only been for a lack of funding that we haven't addressed it sooner. So we have that funding, and this item was brought forward to council in December as part of the 2021 capital budget. It scored in terms of importance a 72. It was only behind Herkimer and Orchard Drive in terms of ranking. There really wasn't anything else close to it. So the council fully supported that project, and that was 2 months ago. So combined, Councillor Matt touched on it, but combined sewers are no longer permitted. And the infrastructure here is 110 years old. And I think that there's even been a commitment through to the ministry that, as these opportunities come forward, we eliminate the combined sewer infrastructure. So personally, I'm reluctant to punt a $3.7 million project down the field to future councils. We've been there, done that, and a perfect example is the Hague Street extension. So any delay that we introduce to this project will not materially change the project. And the scope of work that's to be performed, but it will increase the price tag. It will increase the risk for residents, and it will increase the potential liability for the city. So in the body of the report, it suggests that we defer or delay the project, until such time as we've got a complete streets policy, which I have no idea in terms of what the timing of that would be and how that would again affect the nature of the work that needs to be done. So if we were to delay repairing the underlying infrastructure, it doesn't become any younger, it doesn't become any less expensive to fix, and it doesn't become any less risky for the very residents that live on Alexander Street. So I think as good stewards of the city, we should not defer this critical project. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Carr, I've got you next in the line.
Thank you. And so just if the recommendation is to defer the project, and as Councillor Sanderson referred to, looking at through an update of the city's transportation master plan and complete streets policy, when does staff anticipate this project then would come back?
Okay, I think this is Director Ashton. I see you've unmuted your microphone. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so we would be bringing forward a proposal as part of the 2022 budget to update the transportation master plan, which will also include a complete streets guideline. So we would expect that would be worked on in 2022, and then hopefully for 2023 we would have that in place and we'd be part of the budget process at that point in time.
Okay, thank you. You know, first of all, I appreciate the fact that there's been significant feedback. You know, that's excellent and great to see. And certainly staff have done a great job trying to facilitate public information centers, you know, through virtual means. And the feedback is certainly there. And I appreciate that there's some composition changes that were being proposed to the street, and trees has been a predominant point of contention, if you will. My next round of questions are within the context of personal responsibility under the Safe Drinking Water Act. When I was on council, my very first time, Walkerton was unfolding, and the Safe Drinking Water Act came into play after the Justice O'Connor inquiry. And it's had every council member and every municipality sit up and pay attention. And I know that all of us as councillors get that training every term, but it lays fresh in my mind, having lived through that as a member of council and watching it unfold in Walkerton. So my next round of questions are kind of related to that. So Section 19 of the Act talks about legal responsibility with those with decision-making authority, and refers to a statutory standard of care. And it's important to point out that in addition to any liabilities the municipality has, we as individual councillors also have a standard of care and can be held personally liable. So that means no liability coverage through the municipality. So I'm going to ask these questions with that in mind and within that context. So as it was mentioned here, the water quality, and that's where I want to stick with. The pipes were installed in 1911. So we're talking 110 years ago. And so my question is, are those pipes providing safe, potable water? And what is the level of risk to defer this project until 2023?
Mr. DeCola, can I ask you to answer that question, please?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Carr. Excellent reading of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Standard of Care, Section 19. Deferral for this period of time, it is one of our priorities for water for that water main. Will that water main create an adverse health condition? For the information that's available today, I would say that we will be all right. The primary driver for this was the sewer separation side. The water would be an increased sewer main for added capacity and further development in the area. So the simple answer to the question as per Section 19 would be, I do not see that liability at this time. It should be done. I do agree, but I don't see a threat to human health or potability of water. Aesthetically, it might be displeasing.
Okay, so thank you for that, because you know, as it goes further on in the Act, it talks about the fact that you know, if you're getting a qualified opinion, then the personal liability is covered. Would there be any requirement through you, Mayor Panchuk, to GM DeCola to do any extra inspections just on a due diligence perspective, whether that's inspecting the line more frequently while this project is deferred?
Through the chair to Councillor Carr, that is something that we can do in this particular regard. We have been waiting on this project since 2014, as was stated earlier by Councillor Sanderson. We can increase the sampling beyond our standard quarterly samples. With increased sampling comes increased information. And yes, based on what I know today, I have given you a bit of an absolution in regards to the liability in that case.
Well, thank you for that. And I wasn't necessarily looking for it, but it is nice to have, and certainly rely on your experience. And I wouldn't be doing my job as a counselor if I didn't ask those questions. And, you know, I think it's the reason why I wanted to raise those is that as we sit here as counselors and we're looking at reconstruction of a street, as well as underground services, that there are critical things that aren't seen underground, which we're obligated to provide, but we have to do it in a legal and a safe fashion, making sure that we're not risking human health. And quite frankly, that takes precedent over trees. And so I'm not trying to downplay that, but I can't overemphasize the importance of the water quality side and the services that we're providing underground. The consequence of being is changes to the above ground surface. So thank you, Mr. DeCola. My last questions, I'll go back to Mr. Ashton, then we'll go above ground on this one. I know we're talking about waiting for transportation update and a complete streets policy, but rather than get caught up in the bureaucracy here of trying to create a policy and then say, okay, well, this all fits, can we not just be creative here and look at this as how do we come up with a solution today? Because we all understand kind of what Complete Streets talks about. This isn't the first time it's come up, and the Transportation Committee has talked about it. And certainly I know there's been concerns from residents over once our street gets rebuilt, it'll be a speedway. I guess that's the consequence of getting a better road surface. However, we have ways and means to mitigate that, and there are all kinds of measures out there. So can we not be creative and come up with something that will fit now versus waiting for a bureaucratic policy to come into effect in 2 years' time?
Director Ashton.
So we have received a large number of correspondence from residents of Alexander Street. It's not specifically only about the trees. Some of them want even issues such as the sidewalk. You know, we have a new standard for accessibility in terms of width, and some of those residents don't want to see that to accommodate what they might see as a solution to the preservation of the trees. So yes, we could work through a solution. It's not going to be immediate. It'll still take time. The challenge is that in these COVID times, when we can't get into the same room to have these discussions and things are only expressed through emails, it becomes very difficult to do this type of consultation. So by all means we can, but it won't be something that we would be able to start this year. It'd still take quite a bit of time to work through the issues. And to be made it, and we can meet in a room in the fall sort of idea, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So this is just a practical solution to let the residents know that we're taking their concerns seriously and we're working through some options.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm optimistic we'll be meeting in rooms in the fall. At least I'm going to keep that optimism alive. The concern I have, well, because you know the discussion now was mentioned about sidewalks and being a concern. We've got a road allowance that's more narrow than normal, and the reality is that we have an obligation also under the Accessibility Act that when we replace sidewalks, they have to be to an accessibility standard. We don't have that luxury to say, well, you live on a street that's narrow, that was actually probably constructed when horse and buggy were still flying through there at 2 clicks an hour. But we have an obligation now that we can't change. The province is very clear. And if we were to deviate from that, not only would we be not in compliance with that legislation, I would fair to say that at some point somebody would bring a human rights complaint and have very strong, valid assertions to make, and all they would have to do is point at a sidewalk that doesn't meet the accessibility standard. So I can go with the thought of deferring the project because of the fact that I'm being told by staff that the water quality from a human health perspective can be managed, and it's for that reason that I will defer. But we really have to look at ways to accommodate, but also be very clear in terms of the obligations we have as a municipality. And if you know, in fairness, if those residents were elected and were sitting here, you know, take the conflict aside, they would be in a tough spot as well, because as much as they'd want to preserve the streets and the look of the street, that our hands are tied under some significant provincial legislation that doesn't let us deviate to the degree that's required. So I'm satisfied on the human health front, and for that, I'll support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Kelly, I've got you next on the list. Councillor Sean Kelly. You got to click you're on mute. So
there we go. Sorry
there
about
we
that.
go.
Through
No
you,
problem.
Mr. Chair. It's good to hear the conversations, and it's nice to see that our colleagues here around the screen have had a chance to speak to some of the folks on Alexander Street. I spent some time on Saturday night with James King. James has lived on his home on that street for 20 years. And I spoke to his daughter-in-law, Lisa, today. And I don't sense from, and I'm going to show it, just so for those who are watching, this is what we got in our package. We got a lot of emails, and thanks to the city staff for sending us the information from all the residents. I'm not sensing that they're upset or they're against having a sidewalk. Part of the Ontario Disability Act which is 16 years now, that increasing the side of the sidewalk. I don't sense that they're against that. What I sensed was initially, for those not familiar with the story and hearing it for the first time tonight, the city had plans of taking down 21 trees on that street. And then there was a conversation in around 17 trees. And I think Councillor Sanderson and Millette and Councillor Carr that have spoken tonight about this have made valid points. Safety is concerned with the infrastructure. It's close to $4 million. But my sense from the folks on the street that I've spoke to, they're hoping to continue the dialogue. And I know that we're in COVID and you can't get together and speak, but I sense that they just want to have that conversation so everybody's on the same page. But I do want to ask Manager of Engineering, Mr. Ford, or maybe Mr. Ashton, you can answer to this. Sometimes we get caught up in the weeds at City Council and we assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. So, Mr. Ashton, can you please explain the complete streets policy to those watching and listening in? And before you do that, I just wanted to say one of the things that resonated with me with the residents on Alexander Street, and we talk about transportation, we've had record numbers at St. Mike's Catholic School. I think they're in around 800 students. Nicholson next year is beginning a grade 7 to 12, the French immersion at St. Mike's. And Nicholson's expecting a ton of kids to be going in that direction at their school. And Queen Victoria is in that neck of the woods as well. And the residents told me the increase in traffic, and it's busy now. And I would suggest to any of my colleagues to take a trip over to St. Mike's or Nicholson, and good luck getting a parking spot by 2 o'clock. So I will refer now to Mr. Ashton. Just give us all the 411 on a complete streets policy for those watching.
Director Ashton.
So I guess there's a lot of ways to answer that, but I think complete streets is sort of looking at streets instead of being auto-centric, making it for people. Active transportation ties further to sort of, you want mixed uses sometimes on these streets. You basically want to make it safe. So whether people are in have to push a stroller or up the street or something, it makes it nice. So in terms of, you know, complete streets, sometimes you want to slow down traffic, so sometimes you decrease the width of pavement. In terms of this street, and I think we're using in terms of the actual design process, you know, there is a functionality where someone designing a street goes through, and, you know, there's standards, etc. So in terms of this street, by definition, it's 40-foot right of way. It's got narrow streets. You know, you could consider it a complete street or safe street. but there's elements of it which the residents want addressed. Obviously, trees are part of it. As I said before, after meeting with residents, you know, the issue came up over the sidewalk width. There's also questions in terms of, you know, street speed and stuff like that. That's something that every street struggles with. But I think importantly, there's sort of a process chart in terms of steps you go through. And at the end of the day, as residents, you know, want or expect to have these not just this standard, but other standards. There's, you know, you have to increase your processes, and you know, and some of the solutions cost more money. So we, you know, going through this complete streets process will sort of allow us to sort of identify what the processes are and what the impacts on the costs of these types of projects are when they are undertaken. And that's why we suggested it be done, because yes, you can do one-offs, but I also think that if you're looking at something such as, you know, a request to bury street lines, you have to consider that for every street in the city, not just for one street. So there are major implications, and so that's why we suggested we take a step back and look at it holistically for the whole city.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Alsap, I've got you next in the queue, and then Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to highlight some of the points that were made during my visit to Alexander Street with Mr. Ashton and Mr. Ford. We met with Lisa and Jan, who explained to us sort of the history of the street, what it was that they were looking for and that other residents had expressed to them. But I think, you know, some of these concerns have already been addressed by Councillor Carr and Councillor Kelly and Director Ashton as well. So I would just say, for my part, provided that the assurances that we've received from Director DeCola regarding the water quality, as long as that is maintained, I think it is prudent to put this off until such a time that we do have the complete streets policy in effect, because I don't believe this is going to be a one-off issue. And as Mr. Ashton was saying, this is going to be something we're going to be dealing with in other parts of the city, and particularly in the historic areas of Old East Hill. So having that policy in place while we're doing this, I think will provide greater clarity to the residents and make them feel that their concerns have been addressed, and that we'll be leaving them with something that is as good or better than when we came in, not just from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from a livability and a street view perspective as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I got a couple of 3 questions. Part of the reason we're doing this street is for the sewer separation.
Yes.
Now, is there other sections in Belleville that we can refer this money to do another sewer separation and still maintain what we're trying to do? Because there was a number of sections in Belleville that needed sewer separations. Is there other sections in Belleville?
Well, that's what will be included in that follow-up report that the motion refers to. So there will be a follow-up report with recommendations about how to reallocate all of this funding for a project that we can actually move on very quickly.
Well, okay, and then adding to that, if we're going to take this money to do another project, I don't want to lose this money for Alexander Street. So if we take this money and spend it, and we don't do this project in 2022, and with the new council, then that project could get farther and farther behind.
Yeah, that's exactly the situation. But that's, you know, we've taxed residents for some of this money already. We don't want to just hang on to it. We want to use it. Otherwise, we shouldn't have taxed them for it in the past. So these funds, if we decide to defer this project, will be reallocated. And then this project in the future, after that complete streets approach is done and there's further consultations, we'll have to come back as a brand new project.
Okay, question to Mr. Ashton. If we defer this, do you see any possibility of working with the residents over the next short period and possibly do this in 2022?
Well, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ashton already answered that question. I think Councillor Millett asked him, or was or Councillor Carr. This won't come, the complete streets policy won't come to council as a funding item until the 2022 year at that point. So they won't even start the project before 2022.
No, I'm saying even if we don't wait for the complete street.
Oh, I see.
I'll say, can we
Director
possibly?
Ashton, do you see a scenario in which we can proceed with this project without having done or completed the Complete Streets project?
My opinion is that there have been a lot of, passionate views on this, and until we can sort of have proper consultation, probably being in the same room, hopefully in the fall when we're all vaccinated. I think email has elevated this issue beyond perhaps, or doesn't give us the ability to have kind of discussions one-on-one with people. So I don't think.
But I think the question, Director Ashton, the question is, the resolution says that it would be deferred until such time as the city's transportation master plan has been updated to include a complete streets policy. Councillor Thompson is wondering if we can still proceed with further community consultations and then actually do the project in 2022.
I think it would still be about 2 years off before we come up with a solution that residents are happy with.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's what I'm trying to get. And I know other ones have asked the same question in an indirect way, and I'm probably asking it again, but, I read through some of the concerns through the residents, and some of them are concerned about the width of the sidewalk. And because I chair accessibility, the sidewalks has to be by regulation. And I understand if we do that, that interferes with the trees in some locations. So it's a very big concern. And I just got another one about an hour and a half ago about the same concern. So if that's what it has to be, then I'm willing to defer it. So.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else on this? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think everyone has spoken at length on it. Just a quick question, Director Ashton, and I support the deferral of this. I think it's important. This is a unique street. It's very close to the houses are almost on top of the street. The trees, of course, are almost not quite 110 years old, but they're quite large. East Hill has a lot of this canopy growth and a lot of these trees. Is this street unique in the sense that when we're getting to the infrastructure, it is there, or is this something we're going to see also as we get to other streets that I'm sure are approaching that 110-year-old infrastructure length?
Director Ashton?
Yeah, there'd be other on mature streets. Definitely, there would be the same issues that would arise, but there's also the same issues arise on not necessarily older streets, but streets that have to be widened, and some residents would have trees planted in near the fronts of their yards as well. So yeah, it's something we have to address though.
And I think
through process.
Yeah, and I think just to further to that, I believe the problem of tree replacement is the fact that these streets are so narrow. Is that correct? Is that something we're going to have a problem with on other parts of East Hill as we get to that over the next decade or so?
It's just the location of where the trees can actually go and where the underground infrastructure is. Because if you do plant trees that interfere with the underground infrastructure, then that's a liability for the city as well to fix down the road. So it makes it difficult with the separation of utilities that has to occur and to include trees as well. So.
Yeah,
and I think it's a very complex issue.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think it's important to have this deferral, because of the complexity. And I think, as we've all heard from the residents, and making sure there's lots of education, and just a little bit of conversation, as you've noted, through COVID, which has been very difficult. So I think that's great that we're doing that. And for this case, it is a unique situation to defer that. So I support that. And thank you very much for your work so far.
Great. Anyone else on this? So I have some questions, and I'm actually going to ask CO Bove, because while Director Ashton is his department, CO Bove was a director for a lot of years. Director Bove, do you remember, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you to prepare for this, so you may not know the answer, but do you recall when the city of Belleville began the sanitary sewer separation project for many of these older neighborhoods?
Well, certainly, Your Worship, there were many stops and starts over the years. I think back, probably going back to the 1980s, the city started with some of those works, and through the mid to late 90s, the city got away from them and wasn't doing them as much, and then into 2005, 2010, there was some infrastructure money that came out from the upper levels of government that put a premium on those types of projects, and the city started again actively trying to correct these situations throughout the city. There were many of them in the East Hill and the West Hill. And although I haven't seen a list recently, there have been, the majority of those issues have been resolved. There are still a few streets remaining in the West Hill and Alexander, as an example, in the East Hill that will need attention, but the city has made good progress in cleaning up some of these cross connections.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just for people that are watching, the reason why this is such an important issue is because when you're emptying your sanitary, so basically your toilet water, into the same system that stormwater, that when it rains on the street, all that is going down, it all has to go through the sewage treatment facility. And when you can separate them, you can drain the rainwater that goes onto the street directly into the bay, and you can still treat the sewage. But when it's together, it really overwhelms our system. And there used to be a time where we used to have these discharges where the system would get overloaded, and to prevent it from backing up all over the city, they would basically dump untreated sewage into Lake Ontario. So obviously we didn't like that. We didn't want that as a city. And we started to do these sewer separation projects. And we have done many of them. We have done so many of them that the pressure is not the same on that. And I don't even remember the last time that we had a discharge in order to deal with heavy stormwater. Again, it's been a number of years since we've done that. So we've got to keep on going. But I bring it up because certainly we can defer this project. There are other projects. We will continue in other parts of the city with sanitary and stormwater separation projects, but it's there. The other thing too is that we've seen a lot of correspondence from residents, and today council received in its package versions of the comments from residents, both included on the city email address for receiving comments from residents, as well as emails that were sent directly to myself and to members of council. And in this big package we have, some of which are duplicated, but there's about 28 separate comments from separate residences as I've gone through. And of those 28 comments, 25 are requesting us to defer the project, and only 3 are in support of the project going ahead. And while I've had a couple of phone calls from residents as well asking us to go ahead because they want their infrastructure moved on, the comment I made to those folks that were calling us is that the loudest voices on this are certainly calling for deferral. And so I think, this is an easy decision because we've got other communities, other neighborhoods screaming for road work to be done. So this is an easy decision for me. If this is not welcomed in the Alexander Street neighborhood by very many people or not enough people, then we can certainly find somewhere else to spend these funds and then deal with this in the future. Interestingly, of those 25 folks that are asking for the deferral, I was able to either see in the reference one common family, that is basically 19 of those 25 separate emails appear to be in concert with what we would see as the loudest voices in this area. Originally when I was first contacted about this project, the request was not to do it in the summer of 2021 because of COVID and the fact that folks were going to be at home and that the construction would be disruptive to their lifestyles. And since then, it's morphed on to now talk about trees and about the unique neighborhood and what to deal with it. And I just find that interesting because, we'll see what happens as we go through the Streets program and whatnot. This is not an unsimilar problem with other communities that are, like in Belleville's case, we're 205 years old. We were established in 1816. And when you have older communities, older neighborhoods that were built at different times, there were different standards. You know, as is being said today, road width, we have a standardized road width, and we do that because of things like emergency service vehicles, school buses, maintenance workers, including garbage trucks and street sweepers that are going through areas, and how to maintain access for a neighborhood, particularly for emergency services, because you don't want to have fire engines, fire trucks, or ambulances prevented from entering in the neighborhood because the road is too narrow and it's clogged up with vehicles there. So there's a reason why we have these standardized. You know, the roads today, new roads are all designed with this in place. But back in 1911 and earlier, when this neighborhood was designed, they didn't deal with it. I think Councillor Carr mentioned the fact that at that time it was horse and buggy. And so if you had a fire in your home in 1911, you would be replied to, or the fire department would come to your home with a horse and a wagon bringing water to you. Today, in 2021, obviously we have very different vehicles, and the amount of space they need has changed. In addition, you know, we have our sidewalks, and Councillor Thompson, who chairs the Accessibility Committee, was quite right in saying that these are mandated requirements on the part of the province of Ontario to ensure that everyone can enjoy our neighborhoods. And it becomes a human rights issue when you prevent them from being in place. You know, in Belleville, we have about 200 kilometers of sidewalks. And when you start to have different sizes, we have about 5 different widths over those 200 kilometers of sidewalks. And when you end up having unstandardized widths, all of us, we hear the very first snowfall of the year. How many of us get contacted regarding the city's sidewalk plows that have carved up someone's grass at the bottom of their driveway or between their driveway and the median? And the reason why is because the blade is too wide and the driver hasn't angled it exactly correctly. But when you have 200 kilometers of sidewalks and you're driving around at 1 o'clock in the morning after a snowfall, and you have 5 different widths that you have to keep track of, is it any wonder that this occurs? And that's the reason, that's one of the best reasons for this. You know, if we were to have a sidewalk that was too narrow and people that couldn't use it who were in a wheelchair or couldn't use it in a mobility device or couldn't walk their children off the street, those would all be issues that we would hear complaints about. And the folks that are saying we want to retain our special neighborhood and the look of our neighborhood, they wouldn't be the ones dealing with those complaints. Members of council would be. You know, I agree in terms of taking the step back. This is a good thing. Again, because the overwhelming request in this neighborhood is to not go ahead with the project. I think I'm going to support it, obviously, and I said that already. But the last thing I want to do is talk about trees and talk about the fact that if you need to make the road wider to have a standardized road width, if you need to have standardized sidewalks as required under the AODA rules, then you're going to have problems in this street because trees are located directly in the path of this. And you can't just customize and work around it. Hopefully some of the discussion will either let the neighbors understand what exactly the city is required to do, but also to see if there are different solutions. And I look forward to that complete streets policy. But you know, any development in the city in the past 205 years meant trees being taken down, and future development will mean trees taken down. We have a very good tree canopy policy, and we have a great tree policy. You know, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about the fact that every year the city of Belleville plants thousands of trees. And we plant thousands of trees, not just because they're good for the environment and we need them, but also to replace the ones that we are taking down. In 2020, 1,770 trees were planted by the city of Belleville in the envelope of the transportation and outdoor operations. And that doesn't include the 20 to 30 trees that were planted on the Bell Boulevard extension last year. You know, we have work along Bell Creek, Hague Park, Stanley Park, Rotary Club of Belleville themselves. We're planting thousands of trees. These are all projects that we do each and every year to recognize Earth Day and other projects because it's important. And so if in the future we will have to take trees down, whether they be 21 or 17 or 1 tree, we will more than replace them with new trees being planted. And at that time, we will be able to give residents assurance that we're not going to just be eliminating trees in the city. We in fact replace many more. So we've all had a good discussion on this. Again, I look forward to the recommendations of where else we should spend this money, other projects that we can start right away. And I'll be looking forward to seeing that report when it comes back. Thank you everyone for your comments. And thank you to all the residents who have contacted us, either those requesting a deferral and also those asking us to go ahead. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 8B2, Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, Highway 401 widening, environmental assessment and preliminary design. It is the Deputy Director, Manager of Engineering's report number ENG 2021-07. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Deputy Director, Manager of Engineering's report number ENG 2021-07 be received. And mover and second, moved by Councillor Sandison and seconded by Councillor Carr. Councillor Sandison, you were the first to raise this. I'll recognize you first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question through to Director of Engineering. So as I read the report, it sort of left me with a feeling that we were sort of flogging a dead horse in terms of trying to get pedestrian and bicycle access across that 401. And so, and it left me with the feeling that that's it, we're sort of done. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at other options? And specifically, what came to mind is possibly a pedestrian bridge separate from the roadway to allow for safe transportation for pedestrians and bicycles across those interpasses. Is that something we're looking at?
Director Ashton.
So in terms of the scope of the environmental assessment, looking at these proposed bridges, staff did meet with MTO staff, and so we brought forward potential, what we thought might be potential solutions they could look at between now and when the new bridges are built. I think Deputy Director Ray Ford probably sums it up best when he says these bridges were built in the 1950s when Belleville didn't extend beyond the 401, and not only was that never a consideration, it was probably never a consideration to walk across those bridges. So MTO and through the process, they do not see a design solution in the short term, and they're not supporting that because they still see it as a huge liability to make any kind of changes to get people across those bridges, to allow them to walk across those bridges. So yes, we did try, but we were unsuccessful.
Okay, just to follow on. So as a result of that, are we going to undertake some other endeavors to tackle that problem on our own as a city?
Well, if it's a case I guess to clarify, are you talking about undertaking crossings across the existing bridges?
Sure, as an example, sure.
Yeah, so no, they're not supportive of that. They own that bridge, they own the right of way, so they're not in support of anything like that because they still see a liability.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Bove, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, maybe if I could just through you to council, the questions raised by Councillor Sandison, I think, he's talking about, I guess, potentially building a pedestrian only bridge over the 401 is one option. We did explore that with MTO back when the EA first started, and we raised the issue of pedestrians and cyclists that want to safely cross the 401 on any of the bridges in Belleville that cross over the highway. You know, the cost of one of those bridges is significant. And I think it's fair to say MTO was steering us away from that just because of the cost, and it would be a cost borne by the municipality. And then you're into the question of where do you put it, and does it serve any purpose if it's not in the right location, and given some of the unique land use patterns we have immediately on either side, it becomes a challenge to find the right location from that. You know, quite frankly, the right location for pedestrian and cycling access over the 401 are Sydney Street, Highway 62, and Highway 37. And the ministry's finalized environmental assessment includes their preferred design, which includes active transportation over the highway, active transportation infrastructure designed into those existing overpasses or new overpasses to replace the existing ones. And it matches really what the city has on the Veterans Bridge on Bell Boulevard over the river. If you've been over that bridge, you've seen the multi-use path on the south side of that bridge. And that's what the MTO is proposing on Highway 37 and 62, Sydney Street, as well as Walbridge-Lillis Road, I believe. So there'll be good pedestrian access and cycling access over those highways and over the 401, and they're well designed. I think we're happy with those design. The issue is simply timing. And I just want to point out the EA process that MTO went through really included two purposes. The first one was to accommodate the widening of the highway to 6 lanes and possibly ultimately 8 lanes some point in the future. And the second part was to deal with the existing overpasses because those overpasses will not accommodate a wider highway. They're not large enough. But also those overpasses are getting to the end of their life. They were constructed, as Mr. Ford says in his report, back in the 1950s. They are quickly nearing the end of their useful life. And so I think what you'll see, and I had a discussion with reps from MTO last week, the staff want to move ahead with the replacement of those overpass structures because they're desperately needed, not to accommodate the widening necessarily. That'll be a decision that MTO and the provincial government make over time as an expansion project. But the replacement of these overpasses for staff at MTO is really a maintenance issue. And so they're pushing it forward as quickly as they can. And if we can get those overpasses done sooner rather than later, they will be built to accommodate the active transportation over the highway, but they'll also be designed and built to accommodate the highway widening in the future. So hopefully we'll see some movement from MTO to move from the EA straight into the detailed design on some of those overpasses and get them started over the next couple of years.
Thank you very much.
Sanderson? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, and just so you know, Councillor Sanderson, what CEO Bove said is very, very important here. So obviously, this is a significant cost project to redo the bridges and widen the road all at the same time. And so ministry staff are recommending to proceed with the bridges first without the plan for the road being widened to reduce the cost of the overall project and to get approval earlier. So, you know, they're not giving us permission to do work on the bridge on our own because it's their property. They own it. They have the right to do that. But they are trying to expedite the process to replace the bridges. And we will still deal with the road widening down the road as well as The issue of the Belleville East Arterial Road, which is still alive. And what's important about the ZA process is it still permits that, and we'll still negotiate. That's a political item we'll work with our MPPs on, but certainly, getting folks across the 401 on bicycle and walking and other forms of active transportation is very important, but we need them to provide that opportunity to get across before then. So good questions. Councillor Carr, I've got you next on the list.
Thank you. Yeah, this certainly is a project of great interest. Last term council was able to put a paved walkway on Sydney Street. That was one area where we could touch. We just required some MTO permits for a quick solution. This 62 and 37 is obviously a bigger endeavor. As far as what they're proposing and their final product in terms of overpasses and active transportation, all looks great. The difficulty, and it's been said already, is the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And originally, the construction project had a 16-year window, and none of it, including the overpasses, was in the 5-year capital budget envelope for the province. That's somewhat of a concern, is the timing. So it comes right down to it. When residents express difficulty getting across the 401, either by walking or cycling, that impediment is there because of the current circumstances and falls solely within the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation for the province. I'm wondering though if it's possible, and I know that they've explored the Mawire River crossing under the 401. That is in the city's transportation master plan, and it talks about the fact that it's not technically feasible due to high water levels. And I don't want to go down this road too far, but we've come across that before. We have bridges downtown where we do have high water events. And I do recall 20 some years ago when Councillor Manderville at the time spearheaded that riverfront trail that we have down there, and was able to work with staff at the time to overcome high water issues and to look at a solution. So what I would suggest, or what I would like to ask, I guess, is it possible, Mayor Panchuk, that perhaps yourself, Councillor Sandison has expressed interest in this, myself, if we can meet with MPP Smith and Cramp. There was a point made that this will come down to political decisions in terms of where it lies on the budget and what have you. Is it possible we could have conversations at that level to see, what we can come up with a solution, whether it's overcoming the high water levels and allowing us to proceed so that we get some solution sooner rather than later, because we do have an opportunity up the Mawire River on the west banks. And then as we go further and we connect into the Canif Mills area. So we're on our way, and there's a master plan coming out for open spaces and parks. Is it possible we could set up a meeting and just have a conversation to see if we can kind of push along the timeline with respect to the overpasses, which I think is great, and I think we need to have that conversation, but also to completely exhaust the possibility of a walkway under the 401.
Absolutely, and and we already have had that meeting, Councillor Carr, in 2019. When we went to the AMO conference, we met with MPPs Cramp and Todd Smith to go over the items that we'll be raising with Minister Carolyn Mulroney and her team at MTO, which included not just the BEAR, but active transportation and some other projects. So we've met with them. We can certainly try and meet again. I know you were scheduled to go to that conference and then you had to cancel and you weren't able to attend, but we got a very good reception. I think Councillor Millette and Kelly and Sandison and Councillor Culhane and I, we're really pleased by it. They haven't done anything about it, but this is not an issue that it's new to us. I remember even in the 2018 AMO conference where you and I met then Minister John Yakubuski, and he had talked about some type of a flyaway, process, because he said it was cheaper to build a pedestrian only one crossing rather than add on to one that had to have vehicles. So we can certainly try to set something up again with them. Obviously, we deal with MPPs Cramp and Smith on a wide range of issues. So it likely, we'll ask them if they're willing to come in and have a meeting regarding the 401 corridor study, that we wanted in a budget before the next provincial election to do the bridges, because that's, they funded the studies, but they haven't funded any of the capital projects. So we need that. And we'll endeavor to get that meeting set up.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate, yes, I was aware that you and others have met with the Minister of Transportation. I guess because of the fact that we're now evolved, we've got the province has the EA, the MTO have provided comments on different variations and how to proceed. And I think now it just needs that push across the line, if you will, so that we can actually get something going, because this is, and it's been said 1,000 times, one of the major impediments to connectivity in our city. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Good. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. And it's not related to the pedestrian access for. This is the Bear, and it's a concept that's intrigued me since the conceptual design of it, and I still think it has validity. The Belleville East Arterial Road, and I've read through the reports. I recall the initial reticence on the part of the MTO to even go down that road, and now it looks as though they're dismissing it. I was just wondering, through you to Mr. Ashton, and I read on page 82, of the report, where the response says MTO has considered the Bear in their evaluation and of alternatives, and confirmed that additional interchange east of Highway 37 was not required for provincial traffic needs. My question to Mr. Ashton is, what are the chances seriously of getting Bear done? I know that, as a project, we see the value of it to expand our city, both for industrial, commercial, and residential use easterly. There doesn't seem to be much appetite from the MTO or the province. Do you think we can ever see any form of a East Arterial Road?
Director Ashton.
So as part of this undertaking, this current EA, they deemed it not necessary at this point in time. They did confirm the proposed location would be ideal, but I suppose that is times change, and I suppose as the city grows and develops, especially in that area, then the need for it may become more abundantly clear to the MTO. So
yeah, because I mean, if at a certain point they do the widening of the 401, at some point they're going to have to build in some form of accommodation for the Bear. But I, for one, still hope the Bear will live on. So thanks.
Well, Councillor Millette, it's and Director Ashton may not know of my conversation. So obviously, every time I have an opportunity to meet with MPP Daryl Cramp, I always raise the issue about what is happening with the Bear. And I spoke to him about this 2 weeks ago, and we continue that process. But I also took the liberty of calling Mr. Higgins from the ministry. He's the project manager, both for the bridge across to Prince Edward County, as well as this entire project. And I was concerned that the environmental assessment had not allowed for provisions. He confirmed for me that it did. It allows for a potential Belleville East Arterial road, but that this is a political decision. So he understands that. He wishes us well. His direction has been to do this project without it, but we'll continue to bring forth this long-standing item we're advocating. Again, I really, when I take a look at the growth rates in Belleville that they were using as part of their justification not to go ahead with the project, everything's changed in the last couple of years. Those numbers now provide statistics to support this project, but also, this is a long-term economic necessity for the city. All you have to do is drive down Canifton Road and understand that we cannot continue to have access off the 401 into our industrial park through Canifton Road. And we will continue to work and do that, even if it means that we have to take the steps as the city of Belleville to ensure that bear is constructed. And so we'll continue to use the political levers at our disposal now as we move forward. But this may be the most important item that's facing the future growth for the city for the next 50 years. And I agree with you that we can't miss this opportunity. So I appreciate you raising that. Councillor Thompson, I see your hand up.
Thank you very much. And again, it's basically on the bear report, on the bear intersection. This city, and when we had discussions with some of our industries in the past, we had virtually made a promise to them or discussion with them that we would have a different entrance onto the 401. And I'm sure some of them remember that. So I think it's important that we not forget to push them for this bear. But if they do the other three interchanges, does that have a bearing on the bear exit? If we did the bear, do they need the three other exits?
Well, the Highway 37 issue would be brought up again. It can be, so we currently have the Walbridge Loyalist Road, yep. Sydney Street, Highway 62 and Highway 37.
That's right.
Those bridges are going to go ahead and they need to be widened in order for this road widening project to go on. The question is whether or not they will fund a bear. And that is what we'll continue to advocate for. Certainly, I have made no commitments to any industries that it is a for sure thing. And I would be surprised if any previous mayor and CEO or council ever made that commitment. And if they did, then I would, that's a pretty hefty
I'm not saying we made any promises. I'm saying there was discussion with some of the industries that we would try to get another interchange. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, we've been trying since the 80s, right? So it's not a surprise. But
I just don't want to lose it, that's all.
But I think that the concern we have is that if we don't do it at this point now, it'll be another 60 or 70 years before the province will take those steps. So we'll keep it alive. I'm sure that when we can schedule a meeting with MPP Cramp and Smith to talk about the pedestrian access over the 401, that we'll also be speaking about the Belleville East Arterial Road as well. Anyone else on this? So the motion's on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8B4, a giveaway day. It is the General Manager, Environmental Services Report number GMES 2021-03, and the resolution is that the General Manager of Environmental Services Report number GMES 2021-03 regarding a curbside giveaway day program be received as information. Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Millette, you had raised this item. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. The giveaway day actually was an item that came out of the Green Task Force, and we were discussing. We were discussing the trash bash this year, and I'm proud to say we're moving it back to spring. I mean, I think if anybody recalls, we tried to do it last fall, what with all the changes that COVID brought us. So we will be talking that up very shortly about trash bash. But one of the other items that was brought up, and it was a discussion that was spearheaded by Councillor Sanderson at our last meeting or the meeting before, was other communities have a giveaway day. And basically, as the report before us points out, you bring out items that, are still can be repurposed. I think if anybody's ever tried to bring a desk or a chair, a piece of furniture these days to any of the charitable organizations right now, they're not taking them. What with COVID, everybody's been home and they say, okay, it's time to clean out that corner of the basement or that attic. And an awful lot of these things can't find a home. But I know from experience that if you simply leave something by the curb long enough, at least in my neighborhood, away she goes. So the giveaway day, if done properly, and we have taken time, Mr. DeCola has put together some staff suggestions. We will announce a giveaway day, and it's one day of the year where you can simply take that old desk or that old rocker, put it by the road for that one day. It's not going to be left out there indefinitely, so that all of a sudden our streets end up looking like one giant yard sale that just went wrong. If you can't get rid of it on that one day, you're going to be required to bring it back in. But it's basically to repurpose items, and this is in an environmentally friendly manner, stuff that would normally perhaps go to landfill, but can still be used by somebody. And again, as I know, I put a desk out by the road and boom, it was gone. It was a desk that Councillor Thompson asked me to take away from his house, and I couldn't get rid of it. So I just put it out on the street and away it went. All right. So that's it in a nutshell. But again, thank you to Councillor Sanderson for reminding our recent meeting of the Green Task Force that other municipalities are doing this, and they're doing it successfully. And we think that if we do it in a manner that people responsibly bring their items back in if they don't get rid of it, but it could be fun. There could be treasures in the street. So
Good. Well, thank you to you and the members of the Green Task Force for bringing up this excellent idea. Anyone else on this item? Call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to 8C, Council Information Matters, where Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and Council shall consider such items individually. My screen has changed, so I will go backwards, but you may be in a different order than you were when I first did it under the 8B section. So I'll start with Councillor Carr.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsap.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor McCaw.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Well, thank you.
Councillor Millette.
no, thank you.
And Councillor Williams.
All of them. No, I'm kidding. None. No, thank you.
Thank you. No, so that the motion will be that all the following agenda items be received. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Alsap. All in favor? It's carried. A motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? It's carried. And so we're now moved to item number 9, bylaws. I will do first reading of the bylaws, and if it's okay with members of council, I'll just read out the numbers. 2021-55, 57, 58, and 59. Can I move her in a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Alsap. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2021-13, 55, 56, 57, 58, and 59. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And then third reading of bylaws number 2021-13, 55, 56, 57, 58, and 59. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. And so we'll move to new business. And I'll start off by just mentioning that yesterday morning, we all woke up to the news of a shelter-in-place directive from the Ontario Provincial Police. I want to thank the women and the men of the OPP and the Belleville Police Services for their dangerous work in apprehending the individual and keeping our community safe. They worked well together, and we are proud of their efforts. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we sometimes have dangerous individuals. We are fortunate to have women and men who are willing to protect us, even as they put their own lives in jeopardy. We wish the OPP member well with his recovery, and we're very grateful to him for his service. Well, what a beautiful weekend we had for weather. And while we are all looking forward to summertime, We know that Mother Nature and winter weather is not 100% done with us yet. Our overnight warming center has been activated several times this winter and will be activated again should temperatures warrant. A reminder that it is operating at the former Belleville Police Service building on Dundas Street and is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. on those days. And I will take the opportunity again to remind residents that Hastings County Emergency Housing provides services to anyone experiencing emergency homelessness every single day of the year. If you or anyone you know needs emergency housing services, please call 1-866-569-1941 for immediate assistance. Our city staff have been working hard on winter operations, and now we prepare for spring. Road cleaning and maintenance, opening of our outdoor facilities, and other seasonal work is already underway. The Marianne Sills Park facility and the Bruce Falls track are now open for public use. And I encourage all residents who want to use these facilities to watch for signs advising on how they should be used and when. Several indoor activities are coming back online since the province-wide restrictions have been lifted, including those at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. Thank you to everyone for their patience, as well as all of our staff who are working hard to ensure that we can reopen with the appropriate safety protocols in place. Our continued plan is to be able to provide full outdoor activities this summer with appropriate COVID safety protocols in place and the resumption of full indoor activities when it is safe to do so. More information on those activities will be released when it is available. And while our case counts continue to be very low, we are concerned about the number of variants present in Ontario and here in our region. We already have confirmed cases of 8 of the identified variants. So we must continue to be vigilant and look after each other. I'm grateful to all the residents and businesses who are cooperating and working hard to stop the spread of the virus. We continue to have good news regarding vaccinations here in our region. And regarding vaccines, there was some very good news from Prime Minister Trudeau regarding additional vaccine delivery, as well as the approval of the single Johnson & Johnson single dose. With that information, the province of Ontario is significantly speeding up the schedule. Currently, we have moved past 20,000 individuals who have already received 1 dose, with 1,893 residents who have received both doses. Loyalist College is currently a regional vaccination center, and our offer of an arena at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center will have an announcement shortly about being taken up. I want to thank everyone for the continued vigilance in preventing the spread of COVID-19 and ask for continued patience as we all get the opportunity to be vaccinated. And I really do want to take a moment to thank all those who are administering the vaccines, for their service as well. They are also part of the front line that have been absolute heroes throughout this pandemic, and we look forward to when we will all be able to be vaccinated. Starting today, residents 75 years of age and older can now book appointments for vaccination at a clinic or a pharmacy. This is reduced from the 80 and over restrictions last week. So please look for more information on the provincial website. And also those between 60 and 64 can now book for the AstraZeneca vaccine at selected pharmacies. In an effort to assist with the financial difficulties imposed by COVID, the City of Belleville has delayed the first installment of 2021 property taxes from the end of February until the end of next week, so March the 29th. And I just want to remind residents, we've also done the same with the second installment in terms of an additional 1-month extension. And I've talked about this before. We all recognize that this is a difficult and stressful time for many in our city in so many different ways. I want residents and businesses to know that your well-being is our highest priority. And as a council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on your safety and health in all of our decisions. We thank you for your cooperation and support in those efforts. And then lastly, in response to Councillor Carr's request at the last meeting under new business for an update from MP Ellis concerning rural internet, I want to let everyone know that we were in touch with Mr. Ellis's office in Ottawa last fall after the matter was first raised. Mr. Ellis put us directly in contact with ExploreNet's head office, and we had scheduled them to appear at the November 9th City Council meeting, but then we had to cancel their presentation due to the sudden death of Councillor Culhane. ExploreNet will be appearing before council as soon as we resume in-person meetings and can begin accepting deputations once again. This Explore update will include information on what we can expect in reference to updated rural internet in our region. Of course, there was a significant announcement this past Thursday by the Eastern Ontario Regional Network and Rogers Communication regarding telephone and data service. Rogers has been selected to undertake that $300 million project in Eastern Ontario. This 5-year upgrade project will start immediately with upgrades, and residents will see improvements by the end of the year. I thank everybody for their attention. Anyone else have any items of new business they'd like to raise? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. And thanks for those updates regarding public health. I know I've asked questions to Councillor Kelly and Councillor Sanderson, who sit on the board, and in relation to contact tracing and things of that nature. And public health has done exceptionally well in comparison to other jurisdictions that struggle with contacting a positive case within 24 hours, appropriately contacting those contacts and containing, and certainly our results in the dashboard continue to show that. Mayor Panchuk, you touched on vaccinations, and I'm just wondering, with Loyalist being a facility, and then you mentioned the Queenie Sports and Wellness Center, and perhaps maybe either of my colleagues can answer. Does the public health have good capacity in terms of administering the vaccinations? I know the quantity has always been a discussion item, but all things being equal, if it was a steady flow of vaccinations, is public health able to keep up if we were suddenly to be overwhelmed with vaccinations?
Well, I can tell you, Councillor Carr, just as we get regular updates with the health unit, they can handle as many vaccines as can be delivered to us. We have no capacity issues in our region. We have a quantity of vaccines is the problem. It is too slow getting to us. Obviously, they've scheduled out and they're ready to deal with when we get increased numbers. But the issue is not about potential places for vaccine clinics or potential ways of getting it out there. The issue is only on the supply.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kelly and Councillor Sanderson, do you want to add anything to that? I know that you meet regularly with Dr. Glaza. Councillor Kelly is shaking his head. Councillor Sanderson? No, they both say that they're. Oh, you do want to say something, Councillor Kelly? Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to Councillor Carr, I think it's, as the mayor touched on, going very well. I think they might be doing 1,000 people a day at Loyalist College. That's the goal. And then once things get moving at the Queenie Sports Center, hopefully this area will get pharmacies involved. I was looking at some of the figures today. It seems to be rolling out very well. So just hats off to the public, Hastings Prince Edward Public Health and their team doing a great job. And the volunteers.
Yeah, I think the number I heard last week, Councillor Kelly, was we're only receiving about 5,900 vaccines per week, and they're expecting, I think, them to slow down a little bit before they go up. And we don't have an anticipation for more than 10,000 a week. So, again, if we had more vaccines, we will get them out faster. But right now we're dealing with it, and I think this is a good discussion to have, because one of the concerns that different municipalities are having in Ontario is that they're not filling all the scheduled spots for members of the public who fit those age categories to come in. So no vaccines aren't going to waste. They're calling backups to come in and take them, but we need people to contact that toll-free number or get help to register to go to these vaccination clinics. To ensure that we can then allow younger people to get the vaccine as well. Anything else, Councillor Carr?
No, yeah, I do have one other item, but just on that, I knew that we would probably be in good shape. It was more of a question for public consumption.
Yeah.
We, at the front end of this pandemic, it was all about the cases and the ability to contain, which we've been able to do. Public health has stepped up locally. Where other jurisdictions haven't, and then same with the vaccinations, having the ability and the capacity to do that. And so the ability to respond is what we all want to hear, and that's fantastic and certainly reassuring to our community. The other item, and I'm looking for a staff report on this, and it's in follow-up to Councillor Millet's forum there on mental health and policing. And I'm looking for a staff report on something very simple, but I think it's important. And Mayor Panchak, you just provided a toll-free number for emergency housing. I'd like to see if we could look at a standardized sign campaign for emergency housing number, a mental health crisis, and kids help phone. And nothing significant, but 3 critical numbers that we could then, through signage, place in all our municipal buildings, our buses, our bus stops, and then look at other agencies to come on board with this. We all know, and we've heard, and time and time again, that mental illness and housing is a crisis in our community, as it is right across the country. In the past year, with COVID and the isolation, mental health issues have increased exponentially. The difficulty is, a lot of times, is people don't know where to turn, and we have the resources available. It's just communicating. And as we've done with the warming center, and connect staff with the users of that facility to then turn around and access potential services. I just think it's important to be able to communicate in a very passive way, but have it readily available in public areas, that anybody, whether they're experiencing a crisis right at that particular moment in time, and particularly even for teenagers and children who don't know where to turn. And, you know, for a while there, the kids help phone was even putting the toll-free number on milk cartons, you know, because kids usually, and I know when I was a kid, you sat in front of the milk carton and the cereal box, and that's what you read while you had breakfast. But it was key, and it was a way to communicate that. I know we have the resources there. I just think it would be a good tool to have a standardized communication for these services. So if staff could produce a report for a future meeting, that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr. I don't know, we'll figure out which department is most appropriate for that, because as you know, our social service offerings are through our partnerships with Hastings County, but it may be a report that comes back from the CAO. We will see where the best place to fit it, and we'll get back at some point in the future. Thank you. Anyone else for new business? All right, seeing none, we'll move now to, there are no motions today. Anybody have any notice of motions? Seeing none, I will move now to announcements. Anyone have any announcements they can make? Councillor Millet. So you're not muted, Councillor Millet, but we also can't hear you. No. Oh, you're.
It's this. I
Loud
got
and
it.
clear. Now we hear
Yeah,
you.
all right. Thank you. Yes, I have a rather sad announcement to make today, and I'd like to offer condolences on behalf of the city to Rick Locke. Was a much-loved coach and teacher at Quinte Secondary School. He passed Saturday at the age of 79. Rick Locke is also a member of the Belleville Sports Hall of Fame, and coached thousands of student athletes in this city over the years. A great guy. He was a great friend to an awful lot of people, and a super mentor to an awful lot of student athletes in this city. And I have a number of friends who are coaches in the high school ranks who are quite hurt by the passing of Mr. Locke. So I'd like to pass on the condolences of the city to the family and friends of Rick Locke. He's going to be dearly missed.
Thank you, Councillor Millet. Anyone else for new business? Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention last month was Black History Month, and the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee had Mark Phillips. He's the owner of Mystical Distribution, well known for his fireworks company across the country. He was our guest speaker, and I want to thank Mark Coyle for recording it, and it's up on the city website. Incredible story talking about his journey that Mark Phillips has shared, and we thank him for that. And tomorrow I'm looking forward to the committee. We have another meeting tomorrow. Carrie Smith Dewey, who is the superintendent of school effectiveness with the Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic School Board. She'll be talking tomorrow to the committee, and it's going to be recorded by the city as well, and it'll be uploaded on the city's YouTube channel, just talking about education and how equity, diversity, inclusion is carried out in a school setting and what the schools are doing across this area. So that's tomorrow, and it'll be uploaded by tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Anyone else for announcements? Councillor Carr?
Thank you. Yeah, one last time, hosting a virtual town hall this Thursday at 6:30, and to register, councillor.carr@belleville.ca. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I have mine. First, I would like to proclaim April the 7th as Green Shirt Day, and the Green Shirt Day in the city of Belleville, so that we can honor the Logan Boulet effect. Logan Boulet of the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team succumbed to his injuries following the tragic bus crash in Saskatchewan a couple years ago. Logan donated many of his organs and tissue, saving 6 lives of other individuals, giving the gift of life. Following this tragedy, many Canadians registered to be organ and tissue donors. This became known as the Logan Boulet effect. And Logan's parents created the Green Shirt Day to honor Logan as we continue to encourage Canadians to register their consent as organ and tissue donors. And certainly we all encourage people to become a donor. Also, today is World Water Day, where we celebrate clean water and to ensure that we have this continued resource. I would like to provide congratulations to City of Belleville resident and past Rotary International District Governor Bill McKay. Bill was awarded the Service Above Self Award, which is the highest award that Rotary International bestows on an individual. No more than 150 people worldwide can receive this award in an individual year. And this is the first time ever that anyone from the Rotary Club of Belleville has received it. Bill McKay has been a Rotarian for over 40 years and has always been looking for partnerships with the city of Belleville, and that has benefited our residents. He is also the board president of Hospice Quinte, and amongst many other organizations that he's involved in. And we look forward to that new hospice location opening soon. The City of Belleville is now accepting funding requests for the social infrastructure stream of the grant program. This year's stream opened March 1st and is a nonprofit and is for nonprofit organizations that provide services to individuals who experience adverse social impacts due to the economy, housing, physical, family, cultural, or social exclusion, disability, or ethnic, racial, and religious factors. Learn more and apply today at belleville.ca. The city is now seeking residents' input on traffic calming measures throughout the city. In accordance with the traffic calming policy, traffic calming methods will only be considered on roads within the urban area, within the urban areas of Ward 1 and 2. Visit the city's website for more information and to submit specific traffic concerns for consideration before March the 31st. In preparation for the upcoming 2022 municipal election, the City of Belleville is researching the possibility of providing residents with an option to vote online or by telephone. The alternate voting method survey is online now. Residents may also submit feedback to the city clerk, Matt McDonald, by email at mtmacdonald, one word, @belleville.ca, or by calling his office at 613-967-3256. And you can visit belleville.ca for more information, including to get that telephone number if you've missed it, as well as the email address. Last Thursday, March the 18th, was Transit Driver Appreciation Day. And we owe such a great thank you to all of our City of Belleville transit drivers. We've had a lot of changes because of COVID-19. And from the very beginning, our transit operators stepped up massively throughout this entire pandemic so that our residents could be assured of getting to appointments, to be able to do their grocery shopping, to get to work, and other essential services. We thank them on Transit Driver Appreciation Day and every day for all of their efforts. I was very pleased to attend the Leadership and Inclusion event hosted by the city's Inclusion Committee, along with the United Nations Committee of Quinte. I want to thank everyone involved for making this virtual event such a success. A big thank you to our Police Chief Mike Callahan for being the event's special guest speaker this year. And I hope I don't forget anybody, but I know that Councillor Millette, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Kelly, and Councillor Thompson all were in attendance for that as well. If I missed anybody, I apologize. The city has received 2 of the 5 new buses purchased with the help of the provincial and federal governments. These are the first new buses the city received since 2013. Last week, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Carr, and members of the Transit Advisory Committee were on hand to cut the ribbon. Residents can see those buses in service now. They went into service on Friday. And because we had to get all the inspections and the kitting up of these buses, including fare boxes and communications devices had to be installed. As I said, we hosted a ribbon cutting for those new buses on Friday, and we look forward to getting the last of them later this fall. Last Friday, I was pleased to represent the city during an exciting announcement from MPP Todd Smith at the Westgate Lodge as I said, on Thursday afternoon. Ontario has committed to building 72 new beds at the Westgate Lodge and upgrading 88 of the existing beds to bring them to a total capacity of 160 beds. The City of Belleville was pleased to support this application. I submitted a letter of support, and I'm so happy that they were successful. The Quinte Sports and Wellness Center Spring A Activity Guide is now available. Learn more about the Spring A session programs online at qswc.ca is the website for the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. Registration begins today for Spring A activities. Last week, Councillor Sanderson was able to represent the city as they took part in an announcement with MP Neil Ellis and MPP Todd Smith regarding funding for improvements to our Canifton stormwater pumping station. The Canifton Road stormwater pumping station ensures that the Canifton Road underpass does not flood during storm events. It has also been a critical piece of city infrastructure since its construction way back in 1980. And through this funding, these improvements will go a long way in ensuring its continued operation for years to come. We're grateful to both our federal and provincial governments for their assistance. The City of Belleville has appointed Deputy Fire Chief Don Corbett as acting fire chief until the recruitment process for a new chief is completed. Acting Chief Corbett is a seasoned fire professional with a vast knowledge of day-to-day operations and administration of fire and emergency services department, both on the career and the volunteer sides. He is a graduate of Dalhousie or Dalhousie University, depending how you say it. And he joined the Belleville Fire and Emergency Management Team as a deputy fire chief in July 2017. Acting Chief Corbett was the deputy fire chief of operations in the city of Kingston before he joined us. And those are my announcements for today. So I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2021-60, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on March 22nd, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 22nd day of March 2021. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Alsap and Councillor Williams, all in favor. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Carr and Councillor Kelly, all in favor. It's carried. Thank you, everyone. And reminder that we have our budget meeting